Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at another creepypasta titled "The Stairs Only Go Down, Even When I Climb." This story was written by Dr. Sigmund Freud, and without further ado, let's begin. On the day in question, I had just finished up an experiment at around 4 a.m. and I needed some fresh air. I figured since I worked on the 5th floor, why not go for a quick smoke on the roof? I started to walk towards what I thought was the stairwell, but I must have been mistaken because I found myself in a narrow corridor instead.
Ow.
The stairs finally ended at a heavy metal door. I looked back, but there was no way to tell how far down I'd gone. I tried to kick it open, but my foot only made a dull thud noise against the solid metal. It was then that I noticed 3 small scratches on the door, almost like a makeshift doorknob. No, it couldn't be. But it was. The morning sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, casting long shadows across the city. I leaned against the cool concrete, trying to catch my breath. It had only been a few minutes, but I felt like I had just run a marathon. I pulled out my phone to check the time. It read for 26 a.m. 2 minutes. That's all it had taken, but it felt like hours. What were they? Who had built them and why? And most importantly, where did they lead? I decided that I needed answers. I grabbed my keys and headed downstairs. I knew exactly where I was going. I pushed open the door and stepped out onto the roof. All I could see were the tops of trees and the distant hum of traffic. I had been sleeping when someone woke me up and asked if I was all right. I haven't spoken a word to anyone there since that day. I avoid the stairwells at all costs and try to stay away from the basement. I'm still not sure what happened to me. Maybe I did go crazy. Maybe those stairs were a figment of my imagination. Or maybe, just maybe, there's something else entirely. Something that I don't want to think about. I told him that I was fine, but he didn't believe me. Also, if you want to hear more stories like this, then make sure to subscribe. I'd appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. He insisted on calling an ambulance, but I stopped him. I didn't want anyone to know about what had happened. I didn't want to be labeled crazy. I was high up. Too high. I felt a sudden urge to run, to get as far away from the building as possible. I started to jog, but it quickly turned into a sprint. I didn't know where I was going, but I didn't care. I just needed to put as much distance between myself and the building as possible. I had climbed down 2 flights of stairs and up 4. Why? Why was it that way? What was the purpose of it? I wanted to understand, but I knew that I never would. I traced my fingers along the familiar banister, feeling a sense of dread wash over me. I was safe now. I'd escaped whatever that place was, and whatever it represented. Or had I could still feel the damp cobwebs on my fingers and hear the dripping pipe from the basement. My eyes were bloodshot, and my skin was pale. I looked like I hadn't slept in days, but I had, or had I? I couldn't tell anymore. The stairs were there, but they weren't leading down. They were leading up. I stared at them in disbelief, wondering if I had imagined the whole thing. But the stairs were real, as were the cobwebs on the banister. I hesitated for a moment before beginning to climb. As the hours passed, I became more and more convinced that I was going crazy. I was sure that if I closed my eyes, I would see those dark, endless stairs staring back at me. I turned to leave, but my eyes were drawn back to the stairwell. I could have sworn that I heard a voice calling my name, but when I stopped to listen, there was nothing but the sound of the wind. I shook my head, dismissing it as fatigue, and climbed into bed. I knew I should run, but my legs felt like they were filled with lead. I turned and fled. I ran through the passageway and out the door, racing up the stairs as fast as I could. I pushed them in turn, and the door slowly creaked open. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling and illuminated a narrow passageway. The air was stale and smelled faintly of mildew. I hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. All I knew was that it was deep and getting deeper. I tried to remember which floor I'd entered from, but it didn't ring a bell. What I did remember, though, was the face of the clock on the wall outside. It read for 23 a.m. I checked it again. It read for 24 a.m. Where the hell was I? Is this thing a time warp? Had I fallen through time somehow? How long had I been walking? I couldn't answer any of these questions. The only thing I knew for sure was that I needed to leave. At the end of this corridor were 2 doors, one marked stairway and the other simply a fire exit. I chose the stairway door, half expecting it to lead to the roof, which would have saved me a lot of stairs. I wandered aimlessly through the room, trying to find a way out. Noticed some writing on the wall, crudely drawn pictures of stick figures running away, and the words "help me" scrawled underneath. Then I saw something else, a dark shape in the corner of the room. I walked towards it cautiously, half expecting to see a homeless person, or maybe a stray dog. What I saw was something that made my blood run cold. But instead, I was met with a staircase leading downwards. I shrugged, figuring that it would eventually lead upwards again. Surely there weren't separate staircases for going up and down in such a small building. It was my first week at my new job. I was still unfamiliar with the building and its nooks and crannies. I took the stairs 2 at a time, making my way to the bottom floor, the basement. I reached the bottom and turned to head back upstairs, only to find that the stairs had vanished. Instead, it led to a grimy set of stairs, which also went down and down and down. The air grew colder the deeper I descended. There was no light at the bottom, and when I reached out to touch the railing, I found that it was covered in cobwebs. Something wasn't right about this place. My gut was telling me to get the hell out of there, but curiosity got the best of me, and I continued down the stairs. I stood there dumbfounded for a moment before realizing that I had walked into a shaft, and turning around revealed nothing but concrete walls. I pressed my palm against the cold wall and made my way back to the stairwell. I decided to take the fire exit instead, assuming that it would lead to the roof. It didn't. It seemed to stretch on forever. I could hear my own breathing and the distant sound of a dripping pipe. I yanked at the handle of the iron door, but it wouldn't budge. The passageway opened up into a large cavernous room. It looked like an old bomb shelter or fallout shelter. It was a staircase. And as I stared at it in disbelief, I realized that it was the same staircase I had come down. I burst through the fire exit and stumbled onto the roof. As the adrenaline began to fade, I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but sleep wouldn't come. I tossed and turned for hours, my mind replaying the events of the night before. When I finally got up, I was a wreck. I stumbled into the kitchen to make myself some coffee and stared at my reflection in the window. I tried to focus on the task at hand, making coffee, but my mind kept drifting back to the stairs. I found the stairwell easily enough and stepped inside. It was then that I noticed something strange. Each step I took brought me closer to the surface, and soon I was met with a sliver of sunlight. I stood there for a while, staring at the ground below me. I don't remember much after that. Next thing I knew, I was waking up on a park bench with the sky above me dark with clouds. I got up and dusted myself off and walked away. I'd still work in that building. And that is the end of the story. If you enjoyed this creepypasta, please consider leaving a like, rating, and commenting below to let me know what you think.